Into some colder air ahead of it. We could see some snow over the hills in the far north, maybe even to some lower levels for Caithness and Orkney. But a rain warning is in force for western Scotland, where we could see some very persistent rainfall throughout Monday. Drizzle and cloud across the board, really, further to the south of that. But the rain will eventually arrive across southern districts as we head towards Tuesday and Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Headliners is up next, but first the headlines, and we start with some breaking news. The Defence Secretary says the UK and US have launched a third wave of strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. Describing the attacks as proportionate and targeted, Grant Shapps said they aim to protect international and commercial shipping. 36 targets were hit at 13 locations, including buried weapons facilities, missile launchers and radars. It's the second day of operations following a deadly attack on American troops last weekend. The Houthis have responded, saying, "We will meet escalation with escalation." Stormont's first nationalist First Minister has pledged to work with unionists to build a better future for Northern Ireland. The historic appointment of Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill was confirmed as power sharing was restored 2 years after it collapsed. It follows an agreement between the DUP and the government over post-Brexit trade. DUP's Emma Little-Pengley has become the new Deputy FM, a role that carries equal legal power. Michelle O'Neill is promising to be inclusive and respectful to all.
We mark a moment of equality and a moment of progress, a new opportunity to work and to grow together. Confident in that wherever we come from, whatever our aspirations are, we can and we must build our future together. I'm really delighted to see every MLA back in this chamber today, and I welcome the fact that the DUP have decided to re-enter the democratic institutions and that the outcome of last year's Assembly election is now being respected.
Police hunting for a suspected chemical attacker have released new video of a home in Newcastle being searched. 2 containers with potential corrosives were recovered. Warnings can be seen on the labels, and tests are now ongoing to see if they held the substance used during an attack in South London. Abdul Izadi hasn't been seen since an image was taken of him at King's Cross Station on Wednesday night. The 31-year-old mother remains in hospital with injuries believed to be life-changing. Her 2 young daughters were also hurt, but not as badly as first thought. Scotland Yard say that more than 10,000 pro-Palestine protesters took part in a march through central London earlier today. Members of the Stop the War Coalition and Palestine Solidarity campaign called for an end to the Israel-Hamas conflict. One woman was arrested on suspicion of setting off a smoke bomb or flare. These protesters told us what their demands are.
People need to support Palestine and stop what's going on, because day to day, every day, more and more horrific sights are seen.
The people are talking, and governments need to listen. Not only the UK, all governments need to listen because the people have spoken.
We are all humans. We all should feel each other. We shouldn't be, Gaza shouldn't be like that. People shouldn't be killed and slaughtered like that. So I'm praying for a better world, a peaceful world.
Right, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, as promised, it's our headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's newspapers. I'm Simon Evans and tonight I'm joined by top-tier comedian Francis Foster and by Lewis Schaefer.
Oh.
I know, they do it to make me say these things and you know it's not how I feel. But anyway, Lewis, how are you? You well?
I think it's how you feel. I was doing well until I heard that.
You've brought your son to work today, by the way.
I did. I'm very proud.
I'm not his son. No.
You could be my son. I'd be proud to have you.
There's actually a physical resemblance, isn't there? Have you done a DNA test? This could be interesting.
With Francis?
With Francis, yeah.
Well, I know what your story is. You're basically related to everybody.
I see it everywhere now. Anyway, we must crack on with the front pages. We have a number to get through. The Mail on Sunday kicks us off. BBC editor is paid to help 15 Somalian criminals to stay in the UK. The Observer has Labour draws up ultra-safe bomb-proof manifesto. The Sunday Express, Britain's not equipped for all-out war. The Sunday Telegraph, hollowed-out forces not ready to fight Russia. The Sunday Mirror, top Tory, I will help Sunak wife's firm grow in the UK. Interesting. And Daily Star, killer ghost keeps flushing my bog. How irritating. Those are your front pages. So let's begin with the Mail on Sunday, Francis.
So this is a story about a BBC editor who was hired as an expert witness to help at least 15 Somalian criminals fight deportation. And the details in these cases are just horrifying. So one of them suggested that she represented a violent criminal convicted of assault and robbery would be a risk from terrorists in Somalia, as his tattooed arms would be seen as a sign of homosexuality. Yeah. And so she was brought out again and again and again as a paid expert witness to basically argue on behalf of these criminals why they shouldn't be deported. And these are criminals who have been accused of some of the most heinous crimes, attacking girls with learning difficulties, being involved in fights in possession of a knife, which actually is pretty much our culture. But anyway, so what we're seeing right now with this particular case is the immigration system, it simply doesn't work.
It's obviously, I mean, this story has, I assume, been sort of turbo boosted onto the front page in light of the chemical attack this week. But they are tying it in to some extent with the BBC. I don't know whether they're using the Mail on Sunday. Obviously, no friends of the BBC. Does that seem legitimate to you?
Well, I think everybody is watching the BBC. Half the population doesn't trust the BBC, and the other half doesn't trust the BBC but likes the BBC. The fact is that this is just proof they don't pay BBC people enough money, that they've got to go get extra work doing this.
I don't know whether she was making a lot of money out of it, but it does seem to suggest a certain kind of
she was paid.
Sympathy, I suppose. Yeah, she was paid for witness evidence. Yeah,
but we don't know how much she was paid. However, she did leave the BBC, but the BBC could not confirm or deny the fact that she'd been fired.
Interesting. I mean, there is, as I say, at this point, we feel more than anything that we simply don't know what's going on. It doesn't feel like the situation is under control. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and I think that represents a large swathe of this country who feel probably quite accurately that what we have in this country is now slowly descending into chaos.
I disagree with you, Simon. People out there, they know what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. The country's being screwed. The Tories are screwing them. The BBC is screwing them.
But do you think? I mean, obviously there's a suspicion with the level of immigration that it's at that there's hypocrisy in Kant when they promise to bring it down and it goes up by such enormous amounts. But does that necessarily? Do you feel that they are indifferent to these kind of people being here, or that it's just accepted as collateral?
Well, obviously they're indifferent. I mean, they've basically they've opened the borders up to these people coming in, and everybody knows they're not the best kind of people coming into this country, unlike me, who's brought tremendous amount of culture and class.
Excellent. Very good. Speaking of which, the Sunday Telegraph is yours, Lewis.
Yeah, speaking of that, this is another one of those stories. Church aiding asylum claims on a mass scale, says Priti Patel and Suella Braverman, who were the Home Office people. I like the way they call it the Home Office. It makes it sound like they're working out of their place in Croydon or something. They've got a fax
working
machine
from Home Office.
They're working from the Home Office, and that's why they've got trouble getting people to come to work. It's that they just say that the church is being activists and supporting, and they're using the church to get Muslims into the country, which is, on one hand, it's insane because the Muslims, nothing personal. They hate the church. They hate Jews, but they also hate the church. They call them crusaders, and they want to be jihadis. And the second thing is Muslims are not allowed to convert. They're not allowed to convert unless they convince people, hey, I converted, to pull a scam on these people.
So what do you think, Francis? Is it just a Christian impulse that every sort of waif and stray must be gathered up and made safe? And
I think it's an impulse from somebody who's fundamentally disconnected from reality. And that is unfortunately where we are, where you have people espousing this ideology whereby if you turn people away at the border, that means you're a country which is based in white supremacy, and we have a duty to help every single person who tries to enter. And the reality is we don't and we can't.
No, fair enough. Anything else on the front page of the Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph, Lewis, that you think needs addressing? Hollowed out forces not ready to fight Russia. This seems to have been a story that's sort of being, I don't know, kept simmering, isn't it?
Yeah, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get us ready for war against Russia. And this is, because I'm always talking about Team World, and people aren't really understanding what Team World is. I'm not talking about the entire world. I'm saying it's a Germanic French world. The same people, the church people, the King of England.
Doesn't it seem implausible to you, the idea that we might be at war with Russia? I understand Russia has some territorial ambitions, which we might feel are a bit...
They don't have territorial ambitions.
They certainly don't have any ambitions in the United Kingdom.
England. No. They would like to have England because the Russians, they love space. They need Lebensraum, whatever, but they need protective space.
Let's move on to The Observer, Francis. What do you got on them?
So, Labour ditches radical reforms as it prepares bomb-proof election manifesto. And what this is Labour are so confident of winning the next general election that they've actually started to tell the truth. And what they've done is they're saying they're not going to have a £28 billion a year commitment on greener investment because they know that we can't afford it, and they also know that it's a terrible idea, and they know that it's going to mean that we start to hemorrhage jobs as we're doing with the closure of the steelworks. So they've cut back on that.
Do they know that? I think you're delusional, Francis.
Right, what do you mean I'm delusional?
You're delusional. You're saying that the Labour has never met a pound that they couldn't spend on something pointless. and so basically them saying they're ditching the $28 billion thing. They didn't say they're ditching it. They're just saying we can't guarantee it's going to be $28 billion. It might be more, it might be less. They're going to spend them.
That's politicians for it ain't going to happen, and we all know it. What I will say as well, they've also made a pledge to build 300,000 homes a year, so they're still lying.
There's obvious pledges that go into these manifestos that never get seen. But I suppose at the moment they are in the unusual position of they can only possibly screw up at this point, right? Anything they announce is only likely to destabilise their lead.
The only hope the Conservative Party has is of Diane Abbott doing something completely mental and sinking the entire Labour Party on her own. That's it. That's all they've got.
And they have pretty much neutralised her at this point. The Daily Star to finish with, Lewis.
Daily Star, good news, great news.
Great news.
I don't know, Paul Chuckle, who's one of the Chuckle brothers. I don't remember this. This is before my time. I don't know when he was on the TV.
He's a legend. You have a little bit of respect for that man. Thank you very much.
I have a little bit of respect for him.
Part of my childhood.
And where's the other brother? He murdered the other brother.
No, the other brother died.
He did die,
May he rest in peace, Barry.
He is just a singular Chuckle now.
Yeah.
But, what's the story with the
Killer
loo?
ghost keeps flushing my bog. And this is on a TV program called Celebrity Hell, My House is Haunted.
Oh, he's one of a number, OK.
Yeah, but no matter... Let me tell you something. As you know, as every man knows, if you have a wife, it's haunted.
Well, there's a dour note to end the first section on. The front pages are done. Stay tuned as we delve further into the papers. You won't want to miss it. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, still here with comedians Francis Foster and Lewis Schaefer. So we begin with the Mail on Sunday. Francis, retaliation for the deaths of 3 US soldiers killed in Jordan is gaining momentum now.
Indeed. At least 18 have died during White House strikes on Syria to avenge the deaths of the 3 US soldiers. And they fired it over a period of half an hour because the weather was good. And the reason they said that they did this is so they made sure that they hit the right targets. And they hit targets in Syria and Iraq. And these were targets that were allied or were part of the popular mobilization units. And these have been backed by Iran. Now, Iraq have come out, spokespeople for Iraq have come out, spokesmen, they only have men speaking over there, and saying that what this has done is effectively destabilise the region. This is an act of aggression, and as a result of that, they're going to need to think about their response. So we can see things are starting to heat up with Iran and Iraq, but more with Iran.
Lewis, anything to add to that?
I mean, it's America. I mean, America we love bombing people. That's what we love to do, as if it's going to help. These are like shacks in the desert, and it's not even like it's not even in Iran. It's in the desert outside, and that's the most.
They have that kind of that ideology, you might call it. I remember being taught about this in O-level history, that the British had it in the peak of empire. It was based on the original Pax Romana, I am a Roman citizen wherever I am around the world. My safety is guaranteed by the Roman Empire. You lay a hand on a Roman citizen and we come for you wherever you are. That used to be the case in the British Empire. And now it's the case with America. You cannot attack American citizens, in particular American servicemen, with impunity. And that they have maintained as an absolutely inviolate principle of protocol.
Well, look, I quite agree with it. I think that's the way that you need to be. If you just
if you're the world's policeman, if you are like the dominant superpower, you have to absolutely maintain that, because otherwise you start to get like turf wars.
Well, of course. But if you look at, would China have let that go? No. Would Russia have let that go? Absolutely not.
No.
The only way that you can maintain some semblance of order is by being a strong figure.
Absolutely. Sunday Telegraph now, the Office for Budget Responsibility has been acting somewhat irresponsibly.
Yes, this is an office that we haven't even heard of, the Office for Budget Responsibility, accused of overstating migrants' benefit by £8 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but they were lying massively, even more than that. So it's a slight overstatement. What's happened, what this organization does is it basically says, how good is it to bring migrants in? And they're part of the Fourth Reich team world. They want migrants in. So they're saying that the migrants that have come in just the past 4 years have brought in £174 billion worth of value.
Seems unlikely, doesn't it? The thing that they say, I mean, that's not their only job. The Office for Budget Responsibility, their job is basically to let the government know how much, what they call headroom, how much they've got available to spend and so on, and whether their figures balance. But it seems that they've admitted that when they look at migrants and how much economic value or cost they seem to be bringing with them, they have a very vague blanket kind of a set of assumptions about what those demographics are going to be, whether they're young, old,
but they're only off by 3% or 4%.
It's 2 billion quid, Lewis. If someone put 2 billion quid in your account, mate, you'd notice it.
There's an old saying.
Yeah.
There's a billion pounds here, a billion pounds there. After a while, you're talking about real money.
It adds up to real money. This is coming from the Centre for Migration Control, so they're obviously a think tank who are wearing their heart on their sleeve anyway, so they're agendaed as well. But I suppose the question is whether or not that is a significant amount of money, 8 billion, perhaps over 4 years. I don't know. I was brought up in an era of millions, but billions seem to get splashed around quite easily these days, don't they?
The whole thing is a lie. It starts with a lie. It starts with they brought in 170 or 82 billion pounds worth of value, immigrants to this country.
I mean, how do you judge her? My mum's an immigrant. She's even worth 10 quid, mate.
She hasn't added value at all?
No.
Not even in your own home?
No, not even that, mate.
Brutal, Francis. Sticking with the Sunday Telegraph, the Interfaith Network might be about to get into debt by the sound of it.
OK, yeah, the Interfaith Network, they are facing a threat from the Conservative government, who are threatening, Michael Gove, actually, to be specific, is threatening to withdraw £155,000 from this charity because they have a member who is a member of the group which is called the Muslim Council for Britain, who in 2009 expressed solidarity with people bombing and attacking the Royal Navy. Therefore, the government distanced themselves from that group. Therefore, they are saying to this in this charity now that if you don't distance yourself from Hassan Judy, who is a trustee, then you're not going to get our dough.
Because the difficult thing with an interfaith network, I don't know how important it really is, of course, but
No, it's not. Get rid of it.
It's always going to have extremist edges, isn't it? There's going to be a tight cluster of sort of well-meaning vicars and rabbis and so on sitting around drinking tea, and then as you get further towards the extremes, you'll have people who might have one or two things strapped under their vests, Yeah.
You're delusional.
Okay.
There's no extremist edges. The whole thing is extremist.
What? All faith? I don't think so.
This interfaith thing is a mixture of 500 Muslim charities.
There's no Christians there?
No.
Oh, really?
No, I don't think it is.
You don't think so?
Yeah, it's interfaith.
I think it would be unlikely that it it just be Muslims if it was interfaith. That would probably get rumbled pretty quickly.
It says here, let me find it, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I hate to admit that I'm wrong.
I mean, you are in this case, mate.
It says it's a mixture of 500 national, regional and local Muslim organizations, mosques, charities and schools. And there are lots of people amongst the Muslim faith who love Britain, who love England. But as you can tell by these demonstrations, which are happening every weekend,
I think what it says is the Interfaith Network says Michael Gove's call for it to expel Hassan Judy as a trustee would sow divisions among its 500 member organisations. That's not saying they're all Muslim organisations. There are a number of organisations, some of which regard the Muslim Council of Britain as being a legitimate representation of some Muslim interests, and others might well be more moderate Muslims, and others would not even be Muslim at all. Otherwise, I don't think it'd be called interfaith. It would just be called Muslim.
It could be interfaith because there's...
Unless they were undercover.
Because the Sunni, the Shias, the Wahhabi, whatever it is.
Yeah, but that's the same faith. They're just strands of the same faith.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to Google it. You know what it is? You can go to my Twitter and you can say who is right. And if you even have to lie and say that I'm right, please go ahead.
Let's have a look at The Observer now. An historic moment for Sinn Féin and Irish nationalism, and a new dawn, perhaps even a golden dawn, Lewis.
A golden dawn, because Northern Ireland has a new power-sharing arrangement. Not new, but a power-sharing arrangement, where Michelle O'Neill, who's a Catholic from Sinn Féin, is now leading it, and she is hot. She is really good-looking.
OK.
And really good-looking. And
is she single, Lewis?
It doesn't matter. She's not going to be interested in me.
Why not?
I'm not delusional like you. This is the delusional program. I'm just saying she's attractive to look at.
But more importantly, she is the first Catholic minister to be leading this assembly since the partition of Ireland.
Yes, in 1921. And basically, they're doing it. They're reforming the government because Britain is going to release £3.3 billion.
OK.
So money is important.
Yeah. Francis, do you find this a heartwarming and positive step forward towards an interfaith network among the Catholics? And
no, it's only because they've been given 3.3 billion quid. They've all decided to go back to work.
Right.
That's what they should do here, mate. We should go on strike, and then they should give us 3.3 billion quid, and then we can come back.
If all news presenters, comedians, people on television were to demand 3.3 billion, or they wouldn't go to work, do you think anyone would be employed after that?
No, Gary Lineker would.
Yeah.
Can I just say this, that it's good to see Catholics and Protestants join together, and hopefully in the future to hate the Jews and the Muslims.
I also like that there's a Democratic Unionist by the name of Emma Little Pengelly, which I think is rather a lovely name. Sounds like a sort of niece of Pingu or something. Anyway, finally, the Sunday Times, we're very quickly with this one. Support for devolution is devolving in Scotland.
Yes, a quarter of Scots think devolution has been bad for the country. There's been a survey done which has found out 50% of Scots think the overall devolution has been good. 26% say that it has been bad. But in 2009, 70% thought it was good, while only 18% said it was bad. So what we're seeing is the Scots are slowly realising that they don't have the ability to run their own country. And it should be us, the English, doing it.
Do you want to know something? I know Scottish people, and they're an ordinary group of people. You're not going to get them to agree on anything. If you ask them, is Iron Brew great? 69% would say yes. That's just normal.
Look, we can all agree that Scotland was much better when we were in charge.
Well, it does seem to be dawning on people that it isn't necessarily the alternative is true automatically. I think that's certainly happening, isn't it? I mean, I don't know whether they... do you think there's any kind of appetite for just doing away with devolution in Westminster? I don't get this.
Well, look, I mean, devolution, you're looking around, and look, I was being facetious. You're looking around, you go Scotland, it hasn't gone well in the last 10 years or so. We can look at Scotland and say, things have not gone well in Scotland. If you're looking at things like addiction rates, obesity, poverty, they handled the coronavirus pandemic terribly.
Yeah.
And the same with Wales. Look, come back, come home. You've made a mistake. It hasn't worked out. We're here for you.
That's part 2 done. Coming up, we have Ofsted fabricating the evidence, online safety bill endangering sex workers offline, and the rights of the dead to posthumous gender changes. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. So to the Observer now, Lewis, and it sounds like a dog ate Ofsted's homework.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Ofsted inspectors make up evidence about a school's performance when IT fails. And this is Ofsted, for people who don't know, it's the office of Ted. And it's the office of Ted.
He's here all week, guys.
Ted's, whatever. This is one of those centralizations. This is a centralization issue because the government wants to stick its finger into every little school and to send people in. What the story basically is that they have a new system there, which is electronic evidence gathering, where they give the inspector an iPad, and he writes down the notes on the iPad. And lately, according to this, the
software.
The software is going down, so the inspectors have to make stuff up, like you say.
Yeah.
But who hasn't worked at an office where you had to make stuff up?
I mean, the thing with Ofsted is their reports, I don't know, I do sometimes think they're taking a bit... You've worked in education,
yes.
You know more about this. I suspect that they are regarded as being slightly more decisive and definitive than maybe the process really justifies?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is with Ofsted is that they will come in and they will normally... It's very rare for them even to spend an entire lesson with you. They will normally come in and do like a 20 to 30-minute snapshot of a lesson and then will judge a teacher's performance solely on that. It is not fit for purpose, actually. What you need if you are going to do an inspection of a school is you need to do a deep dive, not this surface-level inspections that Ofsted do. They're quite arbitrary, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I suppose there is some sort of argument maybe that they need to overhaul the system in order to make it something that is more reliable and transparent then.
No, they need to throw the system out.
Well, you don't think schools should be, judged in any way? You should just have to take their word for it? You might send your child to a school that's failing and not understand whether or not...
I think that's why we have the internet. That's why we've got websites, Mumsnet and Reddit, and where people can write down stuff about the school that they've been to. And then if there's enough criticism, then maybe they could send an undercover guy in there. But they don't need to investigate every single school. And so the people are... I love the way in this country, it's like this school is rated great.
Yeah.
That's like the lowest rating you can get is great.
Yeah.
You know, this school is amazing. It's not. This school
they have failed. They have failed.
No, they've got
special measures.
No, they used to have special measures. So they used to have requiring the outstanding, good, satisfactory. But I think they might have got rid of satisfactory. Unsatisfactory requires improvement.
Yeah,
I don't think that's an entirely meaningless grade. I mean, it may be unfair, but anyway. News in the Independent now, potential unintended consequences of the otherwise faultless online safety bill.
Well, very much so. So this new online safety bill that is being put through by the government, one of the unintended consequences is that sex workers can no longer advertise online. As a result of that, they are saying that they're being put in harm's way. They're more likely to be sexually assaulted, raped or murdered because they now have to go out onto the streets to look for their business or go into brothels. And they're saying that this is really unfair, like I said, puts them in harm's way, and that they should be able to advertise online.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't remember this being a feature of the major discussions that we had about the online safety bill at the time. It's a little bit like the Northern Ireland border or something, isn't it? It's something that has not come up. But I don't know, I feel a little bit uneasy about this being a consideration in the sense that, you know, sex work is not... Well, maybe I am.
Are you not sex positive?
I don't regard it as something we should be encouraging. I obviously understand that it's going to exist at the fringes of society, but to make it a... we need to have legislation that makes it... Look, encourages it. Is that not maybe?
Well, I mean, it depends how you frame your response. Is it that you encouraging it, or is it that you see these women who are vulnerable and you want them to be safer than they already are? The reality is that we need to have a very honest conversation about prostitution because we've got this fudge at the moment where it's not illegal, but it is illegal in certain instances. And
it's illegal to solicit, isn't it? That's the usual thing. So you can, if it goes on, but the interaction just happens spontaneously without any sort of previous, Yeah, it used to be New French Model was the sign at the by the doorbell in Soho. I remember.
Really?
I don't know whether that's the. I'm sure. I mean, there are people who used to put cards up in phone boxes, but I suppose that's not problem. That's
the bygone era.
Yeah.
The question is, do you trust the government to look out for prostitutes?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a number of them have visited.
Is it a pornocracy? The Star on Sunday now. People are posting clips of women who are visibly drunk in the privacy of their own city. Lewis.
Yeah, this is police investigating the creepy trend of recording vulnerable women on nights out. This is the Daily Star, and people are filming everywhere. They've always been filming drunk women and on nights out, and they're visibly
Speak for yourself, Lewis.
Well, it's
amazing. Got a bit of video of this. Let's have a look at the video. I think they've got a bit clip. Oh, they're not. Sorry, they're not going to show it. I'm sorry, it is creepy. We were apparently going to show it, and then we've looked at it and we've decided.
But you know what? I saw a video just yesterday that was sent to millions of people of these two women. Seemingly drunk women, kind of, maybe they weren't drunk.
Oh, climbing through a window.
Climbing in through a window and their body got exposed.
That was shown earlier on the show about 3 hours ago on GBNews.
Yeah, GBNews, And then the other thing is that they filmed in Nottingham people fighting each other with machetes.
But this has been the common currency of social media since it began, really, hasn't it? I mean, maybe not by specialised, dedicated accounts.
How about the common currency for everything? They've always filmed, and it's totally legal to film people in the street. Women do not need to be protected. They're not vulnerable as a group of people.
Might even be a means of encouraging them to remain vaguely sober. I don't know. What do you think?
No, well, I mean, the reality is that this was always going to happen. There is nothing the government can do. What are you going to do? You're going to stop someone from filming someone on a phone? That just isn't going to happen. This is part of our culture, unfortunately. And the reality is that our privacy is being compromised as a result.
Observer now, a male feminist, Mike Nicholson, says Andrew Tate is a symptom, not the disease. And furthermore, he'd like to apply some lotion to that symptom, Francis.
Well, yes. So, and this is actually quite an interesting article because this is about one person, a couple of people who do workshops in schools, and also an interview with some secondary school teachers saying that sexism, misogyny has arisen as a result of people, of influencers like Andrew Tate over the last however many years, 5 or so years. But they actually talked to somebody who called Nick Hewlett, who's the head of St Dunstan's College, a very prestigious private school, and he actually makes a very salient point, which is we are demonising young boys. We are, if we look at the constant talk about toxic masculinity, pale, male and stale, the future is female. Is it any wonder that young men are turning around and going, no, not going to have this?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Well, I'll go even further. I'm slightly encouraged that men are sticking up for themselves to some extent or trying to explore possible routes through which they can navigate their way to some sort of freedom and self-actualisation rather than simply being expected to adapt to it. I think you feel the same way, Lewis.
I don't feel the same way.
OK.
This article has been used as clickbait. They just put Andrew Tate's name into it.
Yeah.
And hoping that people are going to pay attention. And I've been asked by the woman who calls herself my girlfriend to denounce Andrew Tate.
OK.
So I'm going to...
What do you think about the idea of feminism as being something that is puts the hackles up in young men? Are they misunderstanding it, or is it that feminism has become a more toxic and more virulent?
I don't want to
OK, let's go back to Francis then.
OK. So, because when people use the word feminism, second, third, fourth, fifth wave feminists, it depends what wave of feminism you're talking about. Now, if you're talking about the fact that women and men should be paid equally, I think we can all agree that's wrong.
Yeah. But, I mean, I'll give you just one example. This is where I see a degree of feminism which angered me. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the channel before. About 2 years ago, I was looking around the sixth form at my son's school, and he was kind of understanding what the change to sixth form would be, and they were in the sixth form common room, and there was a poster up with a picture of 2 or 3 female sixth. It's a co-educational school. 2 or 3 girls students kind of looking at the camera, and the caption said, "Yes, you're welcome at university too," suggesting that girls might think that university was just a place that boys went to. Now, for many years now, far more girls go to university. Yeah. It's 60-40 split or something like that. You know,
it could
not
be
to
argued.
do worthwhile subjects, possibly, but they absolutely do not have to overcome some kind of sexist resistance. If anything, the boys are the ones who should be on that poster. So this is where I feel that there is something to what you say. That there's this idea that society as a whole has decided that boys are doing fine and girls need endless help.
And also as well, and there's been a lot of research done with this particular topic, if you look at behaviour and disciplining, boys get far more harshly disciplined for the same misdemeanour than a girl would. And actually, looking back at my own educational career, I was always much harsher on the boys than I was on the girls.
Yeah, well, maybe you were the start of it all. Sunday Telegraph, meanwhile, have encouraging suggestions that not even dead people should be prevented from changing gender, should they wish.
Yeah, this is dead people should be able to change their gender, according to Labour MP. Her name is Charlotte Nichols. She's up from Manchester, I think. And this has to do with... This is in the fallout from the tragic Brianna Gay murder. And they're saying that it's sad that this young person can't be remembered and buried as a woman, which she thought she was, or other people thought she was. I got to be careful with what I say. But, I think it's a step too far, really.
I don't know if it's significant. It feels like it might be, as Lewis would say, slightly clickbaity, but it does feel as if it's an attempt to get into what would surely be really the biological sex terrain with... We all understand that gender and sex are theoretically distinct, possibly, whether or not, that spaces should be opened up to people on the basis of their gender rather than their sex is the conversation, rather than whether or not you can say if somebody wants to be known by a certain pronoun or whatever. But it feels to me like the records when somebody's dead should reflect the biological reality.
I quite agree, and I think there's nothing wrong with dead naming a dead person.
That seems reasonable as well. Coming up in the final section, we discuss Taylor Swift boosting the economy, bonkers signs at the NHS, and the late Queen's thoughts on Meghan Markle's wedding dress. Stay tuned in a couple of minutes.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners for our final segment. Francis the Mail on Sunday suggests that Taylor Swift is not just Joe Biden's best hope of activating his base, so to speak, but driving a resurgence in the travel industry.
I really like this story. I think it's a really heartwarming story. It's all about Taylor Swift, and she is so successful that when she goes to a city, she quite literally transforms their tourism industry for a period of 72 hours, to the point where hotels are sold out. They're putting up their rates. People then go, oh, you know what? Let's have a little city break in this city. We'll go and watch Taylor do her thing.
Is this? I mean, she's obviously a massive star. I understand that. She's the biggest star in the world. I do find it slightly confusing because I could honestly only sing about 3 of her songs. But my wife took my daughter to New York to see Fleetwood Mac a couple of years ago. I mean, I thought it was slightly extravagant, but actually it really works. You know, it's great.
Of course
They have a sort of, you know, a focus for the whole thing, and terribly exciting. And I mean, is that a new thing, really?
It's not a new thing, but I think every once in a while there's a superstar in a particular generation. And due to the fragmentation of the media and social media, it's ever more difficult to have that effect on an entire culture. There's very few people who do it. There's basically her and Adele, really, when you think about it. So I find it quite, I think it's a nice story.
It's interesting the way that she is seen as kind of neutral in a way, even though there is this kind of like semi-tongue-in-cheek idea that she's being groomed as a psyop to encourage. But she is, I mean, like Beyonce, for instance, another megastar, but there is definitely like a frisson with Beyonce, right? She does these kind of...
But this story is not about that.
OK.
This story is a lie.
OK.
Because if you have tourism going into a city, you might have people leaving that city going to another city. And so, yes, 8 billion pounds of tourism in America. But if you read that the #1 search was for Beyonce's tour overseas. So how many thousands of people, how many billions of dollars were spent by Americans going overseas? So it hasn't been a net gain for America.
What, pop music hasn't, on the whole?
No, Taylor Swift concerts.
OK.
Maybe they
Do you think Americans are going to Honolulu? Well, no, that's still part of England.
According to this story, the huge searches for Beyonce in Warsaw, in Paris, in Vienna. So they're spending money. It's like what's happening in... It's like the joke is, if you pay somebody to dig a hole, it's going to increase your country's GDP. But if you also pay someone to fill in the hole, it could increase the GDP.
And that's how you see Taylor Swift and Beyonce.
It's what they call in Vegas a push. There's nobody wins on this one.
OK. Next up is a story from The Independent. They think it's about time Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, God rest her soul, gets the full Philip Larkin treatment.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Well, he was a poet who was exposed as racist after his death. Much loved British poet.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. And do you think our audience is well educated in poetry?
I don't know. I don't know. I like to think I can stretch them a little bit.
And this is the Queen Elizabeth, our Queen, thought Meghan's wedding dress was too white for divorce, And this is interesting because I actually know Queen Elizabeth, or knew her. She was a big fan of Louis Schaefer. She came and saw me at the Firehouse in Windsor.
Okay.
Okay. And she actually, according to this book from Ingrid Seward, she was from the Majesty magazine, she said that Meghan was, her white dress was flamboyantly virginal. And I love the Queen, and I can't imagine the Queen or any human being ever saying that. Flamboyantly
virginal. You don't think it rings true? You think that's been made up?
Not an ounce of true with that.
I have no idea about her personal preferences for wedding dresses, but that is a traditional view that if you get married for the first time in white and then afterwards it's ivory. I know my own mother-in-law, not that my wife was a first-time bride, but I do remember her making that observation about my wife's dress, which was slightly ivory, and she said that was regarded as being the dress of a second. Have you heard this? I mean,
no, I'm not that into wedding dresses.
Of that. Okay, well, yes, the absolute white is should be the first.
But
within a church,
would she ever use? Would anybody ever use the term flamboyantly virginal?
My mother-in-law, absolutely.
Yeah. Is that a British term?
Whether or not she got it from the Queen, I wouldn't be able to say. But I could definitely hear it. Yeah.
I just think that I love Meghan. I think she's incredibly beautiful and she can wear whatever she wants.
Good for you, Francis.
You know what?
I hope she reads this, bro. This from the Mail on Sunday. Some worrying signs in the world of the NHS, Francis.
Well, yes. So the Daily Mail, or the Mail on Sunday, has gone with the story about bonkers signs on the NHS. There's quite a lot here to look at.
Right? They've got
it's a little bit of comedy. Please know, our hand towers are being monitored.
I'm going to put up some pictures. There you go. Somebody is defecating in this bin and the housekeeping staff are having to deal with the waste. This is not acceptable. Must stop immediately.
Well, we have the same problem at GB News, although I've noticed ever since Josh has gone on holiday, it's stopped.
Heard something in the wall or ceiling. If you see something, say something. That is weird.
It could be an NHS nurse that got trapped.
No entry, pigeon problem. So initially you look at that, you think no entry, pigeon, and that's not going to be read by any pigeon, and then it's actually saying don't come in because there's a pigeon problem.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What would be the pigeon problem?
This is a huge organisation, the NHS. They've got 1 million people probably working at the NHS, or more.
Yeah.
I think it may be the largest. They've got hundreds of sites. They got millions of people. Of course, they're going to be weird people working at the NHS.
There's going to be a few rough edges, a little bit like the Interfaith Network or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, they're all rough edges.
Defecating in the bin's no good.
Yeah,
though,
exactly.
Really?
How else are you meant to deal with stress?
I've never seen... I've not got used to and I still think it's very off-brand that the GB News toilets are mixed gender, right?
Yeah, gender neutral. We're progressive.
And
that's going to make it so hard to decide. The show is nearly over.
No.
Let's take another quick look at Sunday's front pages. I know it goes by in a flash, Lewis. Mail on Sunday. BBC editor is paid to help 15 Somalian criminals to stay in the UK. Observer have Labour drawing up an ultra-safe, bomb-proof manifesto. The Sunday Express, Britain's not equipped for all-out war. The Sunday Telegraph, hollowed-out forces not ready to fight Russia. The Sunday Mirror, top Tory, I will help Sunak's wife firm grow in the UK. And the Daily Star Sunday, killer ghost keeps flushing my bog. Those were your front pages, and that's all we have time for. My thanks to my guests, Francis Foster and Lewis Schaefer. Nick Dixon will be in the hot seat tomorrow with Paul Cox and Jonathan Cogan. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, good night.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry, here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. During the northern half of the UK that saw some of the better, sunnier breaks over the course of today, and into this evening as well, you've got the greater chance of seeing some clearer spells around to start off the night. Quite murky and cloudy across the southern half, particularly western Wales, southwest England, some hill fog, outbreaks of drizzle around. The cloud will tend to thicken in the north as we head throughout the second half of the night, some rain eventually arriving towards dawn. But for most of us, it is going to be a very mild night. Temperatures really here what we'd normally expect during daytime at this point in February. Quite a dreary, damp start for Northern Ireland, Northern England and into Scotland as we head into Sunday with outbreaks of rain spreading their way in. A touch dry to the south, still some drizzle to watch out for, and we could see the odd sunnier break just develop perhaps for eastern Wales, eastern England, perhaps also eastern Scotland as well. But with some very blustery southwesterly winds coming in, and that is a mild direction of air, so it is going to see temperatures widely above average for the time of year. That rain in the north eventually stalls where this frontal system lies across Scotland. As it is pushing its way into some colder air ahead of it, we could see some snow over the hills in the far north, maybe even to some lower levels of Caithness and Orkney. But a rain warning is in force for western Scotland, where we could see some very persistent rainfall throughout Monday. Drizzle and cloud across the board, really, further to the south of that, but the rain will eventually arrive across southern districts as we head towards Tuesday and Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's